So you're going to start here behind the tire. The front edge of the tire is going to be at the plane of the two cones, loaded and made ready. At the buzzer, you have a minimum of one flip, a maximum of your forward fault line up there between the two cones. Okay, once you're satisfied you're close enough, stand up on top of the tire, clean the plate rack, safely dismount, watch your muzzle and finger control, move to the barrels. From between the barrels and under the stick, 3 hits on each piece of steel. Once you've satisfied that, move over to the right. From under the tank trap, 3 hits on each steel. At that point, I'll tell you to stand up, and then we'll unload and show clear. Stand by. Whoosh. Stand up, please.
Sorry about that. I was like, oh.
How many times do I have to hit that before it counts?
Knock it over. It can be done. Left. Fire.
Wow, that was not fun. All right, so Ian, I know that stage 3 and 4 wasn't your favorite, and not so much. But what do you think of the match in general? Overall, it was a good match. I really liked the stage designs. Stage 3 was a little bit simplistic. It was basically, here, shoot a spinner. And yet, that's a skill that, we've seen the spinner come out a lot. You use it, they use it here at Arizona 2 Gun, and it just kills so many people.
Really, a stage can be spinner.
Yeah.
And what's funny about that is either you can or you can't. There really seems to be a binary thing. There's very few people that just barely spin it. You either spin it or you don't.
Your time's going to be like 60 seconds or you're going to time out.
And this is not on you, but from my experience, I want to hear what you think.
Okay.
Spinning or not spinning that spinner is based on one, marksmanship.
Yes.
But more than marksmanship, fire discipline. It's about controlling when to take the shot, not get ahead of yourself and not get behind yourself, but be willing to wait. When there's a target presentation, there's a better target presentation coming with the spinner if you wait just that extra split second.
Yes, but
Okay.
once you understand the timing, you have to have the marksmanship.
Yes.
Because, for example, I think I understand the timing fairly well.
Okay.
The issue I have is about 50% of the time I make the hit, but I've only got one shot worth of opportunity to make that hit.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand the timing perfectly, but if I don't successfully hit when I pull the trigger, then you have to wait for the next presentation. And if you can't make the hits fast enough, if you can't make the hits reliably enough, you just don't get enough energy into the spinner.
That's a very good point. Misses on a static target frequently, unless it's a limited round count stage. You just make them up.
Right. Bang, 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 ding.
Missing on the spinner literally misses an entire cycle of time that could have been used to spin the spinner.
Right. The spinner is constantly slowing down, and every time you miss is a chance to fight entropy that you have failed to take advantage
Entropy, the natural state of the universe.
Yes.
But if you miss it twice, now you're screwed.
You're really behind.
You miss
the
it
curve.
3 times, you're starting over.
Right. We saw a couple people here who actually, they got it close. They got it 3/4 of the way up, and then by 60 seconds later, it was at a dead standstill, and they had to try and start it again. In fact, I had that when I had to reload completely. I kind of lost all the momentum I had, and I was actually able to get it back up to 3/4 of the way around, and then just couldn't quite follow through on it well enough.
So there's the train wreck part. Let's go back to the good part. The first 2 stages we shot from the day.
I don't remember the good part.
Yeah, you do. You shot very well. You shot well. We had the 2
did.
longer distance stages, and
Yes.
you finished them within
Yep.
reasonable times.
Yep.
And that was kind of the point of this match for
Yes.
us, was to talk about, a standard issue M16.
It's my takeaway from it is kind of that the iron sights on the M16 will do the job if you can.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't, the scope will help you. They'll give you a little bit of that extra boost to get it done if you don't quite have the same marksmanship skills.
Yeah, here's the thing. Obviously, iron sights have deficiencies that a scope can take care of that are just physics. Better light aggregation, so if it's low light, you have better time with scope than you would with irons. Obviously, the target is magnified, although minimally so in that.
This is there's no way this thing's 4 power magnification.
I don't know, we should test that.
Yeah.
But and it also brings the target and your reticle on one plane of field of view.
Right.
Which is something you don't have with irons. With irons, you've got this fogged out, focused on front sight, fuzzy target, which is a hard thing to do, especially on a moving target.
Moving target, and when the target's a little bit harder to see and farther away, it's hard to, you have to remember where the target is, bring your focus onto the front sight, and be able to hold steady enough to make that hit. If what's more likely to happen with me is I'll get the target, I'll transition to the front sight, and it starts moving, and I lose track of where the target was, and then I have to go back and reacquire the target. And then, so I can make the hits most of the time, but it takes longer.
And that problem would be mitigated with a scope.
Exactly.
Even this one.
Yeah.
Now, these triggers are stock. They are not helping either of us.
No, they really aren't.
So what you need to have with this kind of trigger is follow through.
Exactly.
So on top of the sight picture optic discussion, we hear this question a lot. What scope should I get to shoot good groups? The answer is iron sights. Iron sights shoot good groups. Good rifles with good sights, a good shooter, and decent ammunition is what shoots groups. The sighting system in and of itself does not. And in fact, I'll tell you from Hi-Power, I shoot better groups with irons than I do with many scopes
I kind of believe that.
because of the repeatability of the general mechanics of the gun.
What's interesting to me is the better of a shooter you want to become, kind of the worse of a gun you ought to be shooting.
We've said this before,
If you take out if you get good at shooting a flintlock target rifle, you're going to be fantastic on that and just death on wheels on this.
Right, so that's what we said, lifting heavier weights at the gym, using older guns for practice.
Yep.
Getting better with that gun means when you pick up an AR, you're like, oh my God, I'm in the future.
Right.
And even an SP1 with iron sights feels like you're living in sci-fi.
Right. And I should say, the reason I bring up a flintlock is not because it's old, but because the lock time is so incredibly long that it's not just probably a heavy trigger, but it's also trigger, snap, flish, boom. And you have to stay on target through that whole process. And they're very hard to shoot accurately.
I would argue you could really do, to a lesser degree, the same thing with a percussion cap gun. And if you want to get practice on follow-through, the way to do it is take a gun with a long lock time, reasonably accurate, and shoot it offhand.
Yeah.
Not prone, not kneeling, not sitting, offhand on a target at 100 yards.
Yep.
Do it a lot.
Yeah.
That'll give you follow-through.
Exactly.
Also,
And
by the way, so will trap ski and 5 stand. It's a lot of shotgun shooting.
that makes sense.
That's a lot of follow-through in that, too.
yeah.
So, at any rate, scope versus irons.
Boy, it's a tough call. The scope was useful here largely, in fact, really only because the targets were hard to see. if these had been, this was a little bit of an atypical match in some ways, in that the targets were smaller and farther away than normal here. If this had been one of the 2G ACM matches in Tucson, I would probably have not even bothered using the scope because 50-yard, half-size silhouettes and that sort of thing are actually easier to engage with the iron sights because I don't have this looking through a drinking straw issue that you do with one of these scopes.
People misinterpret a lot of things that are said in a way that I don't intend them. So I mean this in the right way. If you gave me that scope, I would shoot better. No, if I was on this gun, I would have probably been able to shoot better or further.
Yes.
However, I can do the same thing with the irons without the scope.
Yes.
Putting the scope on your, and we know this is a competition between him and I. We're watching Ian get better reliably.
Yep.
Today was an anomaly. No, it was. Yeah. The scope doesn't automatically make you a better shooter. The scope enhances the abilities you already have.
Right. Absolutely.
So if you don't have those abilities already, the scope doesn't magically fix the problem.
Correct.
That's what I'm going to say. Anyways, that's a long conclusion.
I think we've gone quite long here. So if you enjoy seeing this sort of thing, check out our Patreon. If you can't support us on Patreon, we totally get it. Share the videos, subscribe on YouTube and Full 30, and thank you very much for watching.
These are awesome.